Hello, everyone. Welcome to the signing day special here at BuckeyeHuddle.com and the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast. We're doing our recruiting capsules for all of the class of 2024 signees today for Ohio State. Right now, we're going to talk about running back commit and now signee Sam Williams-Dixon, Pickerington North, right down the road from campus. A bit of an interesting ride with running back recruiting again this year. A better finish. Didn't strike out like last year, but an interesting ride. Sam Williams-Dixon was kind of always one of their guys, was kind of a guy we knew would come into this class in some form as a kind of a complimentary back to whoever else they were able to get around him. And it looks like it'll be just him and James Peoples, Jordan Lyle flipping to Miami right before signing day. But this was a guy who was kind of on the radar for a really long time. They didn't offer him right away. They watched him. They got to know him. And then eventually they moved on him and brings an interesting element, I think, to the backfield. He's able to catch the ball. He can block. He's kind of maybe the answer to what they lost with Evan Pryor in terms of pass catching ability. But Kevin, you live like right in Pickerington North's front yard. What do you think of Williams-Dixon? What have you seen of him over the years?
Yeah, I really like Williams-Dixon. I think one of the big things to remember too was that he was playing at West Holmes before. He was playing. The joke is, he's playing against Amish kids. Well, Amish kids don't go to Ohio high schools per se, but he was not playing against the state's best competition. He moves to Pickerington North. Suddenly he is playing in some of the best, competition within the state. And he's looked really good. He went into a Pick North program that had 3 backs and nobody really was getting to tote the rock a ton because of that. And, I had the opportunity to see him in the footage that we'll get to here in a minute. I shot myself, and it was not a game that he was heavily involved in, but he had some big games of where he put up some major yards and had some key plays. And I think he's somebody that's going to be a Swiss Army knife type of player, can do a little bit of everything. I think that the way that everybody said, then you're going to be the next Percy Harvin as the H at Ohio State. I think everybody's now going to be the next Xavier Johnson in terms of being that Swiss Army knife. But, I see some similarities there.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison in terms of body type and just kind of skill set. He's going to have to be able to do some things out of the backfield, catching the football, blocking, things like that to really find his role at Ohio State. And those are things I know he does well already. He's got a really good build to him. He's a strong kid. I think the move to Pickerington North helped him. I think seeing him against better competition, guys who could run a little bit, guys who, weren't necessarily just be able to, bully around or whatever, guys who could come up and give him that contact that maybe some of the D5, D6 types kids he was playing against before couldn't do. So he's got some good wiggle to his game, but I think he's at his best when he just puts his head down and goes north-south. But he's got some kick returning ability. I think you said it well, kind of a Swiss Army knife for the Buckeyes. In addition to the transfer, I think the other thing that's kind of interesting about his recruiting process is, he went from being basically the number 3 back in the class to the number 2 back in the class with Jordan Lyle's flip. And, with Evan Pryor's transfer, Mayan Williams off to the NFL, Chip Trainum transfers. We still don't officially know what Travion Henderson's going to do. The clock might have been sped up a little bit here in terms of his ability to get on the field. I mean, this was a guy who I thought, redshirt first year, sit behind Lyle and Peoples within the class. They'd have a couple guys, vets in front of them. Maybe year 3, year 4, he's kind of like almost like a Chip Trainum in terms of getting on the field, or maybe even better example would be Xavier Johnson, who had to kind of wait his turn, so to speak. And that may not have to happen. He may get the call a little earlier now, just some of the movement that's happened. So interesting opportunity he has now, I think, to maybe get out there a little earlier than we thought.
Yeah, that opportunity is going to be there. You hit the nail on the head. We don't know exactly what that room is going to look like as of signing day, but even if Trevion comes back, I mean, there still could be ample carries there. I mean, he's going to have to really compete against James Peoples, in my opinion, for that spot. There's so many years that we go into a season and Ohio State seems to have 5 backs, and it's like, well, these other couple guys are just going to be buried. And we've seen all 5 of them have to play at, in one way, shape, or form. Maybe has not been the case as much in a lot of these other years. 2022 was a little bit different, and still not exactly sure why we didn't see more Dallin Hayden, but that's neither here nor there. But I think Sam Williams-Dixon certainly has a good body type, and running back is a position of where that path to playing as a young guy is not difficult. I don't say it's not difficult. It's not as difficult, because if you can get your blocking down and everything else, it's, run to daylight, and that's, going to be there. It's not like you're having to learn like 500 different things and learn how to, how to, sort widgets in Swedish or anything like that. So I think that there is that ample opportunity there, but it'll be a nice battle to see between him and James Peoples as to, who can grasp the brass ring first and maybe, be the first guy to see some meaningful playing time.
Yeah, they're going to have to play at least one of the freshmen. I mean, even if Trevion Henderson comes back, you've got Dallin Hayden, who I think everyone likes, but you need 3 back. I mean, 3 backs are going to play, not necessarily split carries evenly, but you're going to need a third back at some point. So I think he went from a guy who we would not see really at all for a couple years to someone we may at minimum see next year in garbage time, because they're going to have to give those carries to somebody too. So I think if you're Sam, I think, maybe you weren't happy that Jordan Lyle, I won't say you're happy that Jordan Lyle left the class, but I think you just got yourself an extra opportunity to get on the field earlier. So that'll be interesting. Really interesting story, like interesting kid. Was living with his coach when he was at West Holmes, originally from the Columbus area. So he kind of had a little homecoming going to Pickerington North. I think a story of like perseverance, really, because, had some bouncing around as a kid and just, some obstacles to overcome there. And he turned himself into a really good football player. And even getting the offer when he was at West Holmes was impressive. I mean, Ohio State doesn't offer kids from West Holmes very often. So I think they'd only had like one guy from the county there, I think at one point. So this made a little bit of history there with that. So just a guy I think that's easy to root for, important depth piece to this recruiting class, and someone that I suspect the fans will be able to find it pretty easy to root for, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. And fans like to find those types of players to be able to get in early, to invest in early. And I think that Williams-Dixon will be one of those guys, especially having the 1 year at Pick North and being a little bit more of a household name there. And just, I think that people will glom on to the 2 running backs who remained in the Ohio State class after losing Lyle, just because of, everybody likes that whole loyalty story and everything else. And, until these kids sign, nothing is in ink. But, now that Williams-Dixon is signed, I think that's a big get for Ohio State. And it does, of course, create the interesting question in 25, will they be able to take more than 1 back? And will they continue to take South Florida backs only to see them leave for Miami? But, stay tuned. In 365 days or whatever, we'll be talking about that, I'm sure. Yeah,
and to your point, though, I do think this opens them up. It was always interesting to me, the 3 running back class this cycle, when I think 25 is the class that they're in on even more options. I mean, you've got 2 really good ones in state next year with Bo Jackson and Marquise Davis. You've got Jordan Davison out in California. You've got Byron Lewis in South Florida. And yes, folks, they're going to continue to recruit him. That's not me. That's not my opinion. That's just me reporting to you that they have no plans of backing off of Byron Lewis after what's happened the last 2 years in South Florida. So stay tuned for that one. But I think this sets them up to take at least 2. And I think you could take 3 next year if you could get 3. Now, will they be able to do that? And I think we found this year that's kind of hard to massage, but I think it does set the table for them next year to really sign another good running back class after some disappointment in 2023 when Mark Fletcher left for Miami. So stay tuned to that. But Sam Williams-Dixon is in the class, important running back piece to this class, and a guy who I think Ohio State fans will root for pretty hard, and could actually see the field earlier than we initially expected. So stay tuned to learn more about Sam, and we've got more capsules coming. We've got a lot to get through today, and we'll be here with updates on each kid that signs.